All right, welcome everyone to a new episode of the Roscoe's Wetsuit Neuro podcast. I am your host, Toby Passman. On the show with me today, we have a special guest, Will Rodriguez. Will is the executive producer of a mental health podcast called Calm, Cool, and Collected, and he's the host of the Skeptical Metaphysician. Having undergone his own personal mental health challenges, he's researched different modalities and is able to speak about them. He owns his authentic truth and has no problem sharing it with whomever wants to hear it, and hopes that his path will help and inspire others struggling with the same challenges as to not lose hope. His story involves spiritual growth, but not in the religious sense. Rather, it's more about him learning how to be a better person after spending many years fooling himself into thinking he already was. Will, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to have been invited. Thank you.
Absolutely. So tell me about the last sentence of your bio there struck me. So you learned how to become a better person after spending a lot of years thinking that you already were. Tell me about that kind of realization, or what led you to that?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. I think that over the past year, I think everyone would agree that we've undergone some seismic shifts in the way we live our lives, and has forced us to take a look at ourselves through a more not a jagged mirror, but one that shows us who we really are a lot closer than we've had an opportunity to in the past. Being behind closed doors with our loved ones for so long, you're forced to take a look at some certain things. To be able to share fully, I think I really need to go back into my past a little bit so that so it makes sense to you and to the audience. But I was born in Puerto Rico to Cuban parents. We at a very young age, not to do the whole sob story, I was one of very many people that were sadly victimized by sexual abuse. At the young age of 6 and 7 years old, my parents had challenges, and they ended up getting divorced. And transplanting me from everything that I knew on that small island to, first Miami and then to Fairfield County in Connecticut, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that area of the country, but it's known as the second richest county in the country, second only to Beverly Hills. So if you can imagine being a small Puerto Rican kid who speaks with an accent, who thinks differently, who customs and cultures are very different, is dropped in the middle of an entire town full of, we call them preppies at the time, preppies or yuppies or whatever you want to say. There were bound to be conflicts. So I learned to fight at a very early age. I learned to fight for everything that I thought was due to me. I learned how to fight for any respect that I thought I needed to have. I learned that the only way to be accepted was to fight my way into things. So I developed a sense of self that was jaded in some ways, because I, over the course of several years, learned that the way I approached situations was more from a fight angle versus a flight angle. And it became a part of who I was very early on, to the point where after 30 years of being in that particular frame of mind, I couldn't even see that I was actually a very angry man who demanded respect when possibly respect wasn't earned well enough yet. So when I say that I thought I was a good man, over the past year, I've looked at who I really am. I've done a lot of soul searching, done a lot of personal growth things. I've gotten into meditations, and through the course of producing this mental health podcast, Calm, Cool, and Connected, I was able to learn a lot about who I was, and suddenly realized that I didn't particularly care for the person that I was. So I have embarked on a journey to better myself because I just plain didn't like who I was. I was known as Will the Complicated Fellow when I worked at a television network in the country. I was in constant odds with my coworkers because I couldn't understand why they weren't doing things the way that they were supposed to have been done, when in essence I was probably just finding fights that really didn't need to be found, because it's the only thing that I knew. Then fast forward to this past year, and I have a somewhat high stress position as a television producer. In fact, Calm, Cool, and Connected is also a television show that airs in the Virginia region. And through lots of different factors, ended up having a breakdown, an absolute mental breakdown, right as COVID started to hit last year. The timing couldn't have been worse. At the same time, the timing couldn't have been better because we were forced indoors. I was able to take a sabbatical or hiatus from my job for several months to work on bettering myself or getting myself back from this breakdown that I had. Over the course of my struggle back, I found these types of podcasts, these types of mental health resources that were out there that I really didn't have my thumb on before. I didn't even know they really existed. So thanks to an incredible therapist, I found apps like Calm and Headspace, which allowed me to center myself, find myself, my true essence, by way of finding the quiet inside me, being meditative. And through my research into the different modalities within meditation, I also started finding other mental health resources that were instrumental in helping me get my head back together again. So when I came out from under it, and I say came out from under it in a very loose sense, I don't believe I'm maybe ever will come out from under it completely. I feel it's more of a lifelong evolution that I'm undergoing. But as I started to get to the point where I felt comfortable enough to face things and speak about what I've learned, the first thing that I thought was, I need to stand something up that is going to help people the way that some of these other resources helped me. And that's where Calm, Cool, and Connected was born. I made some tweaks to the formats that I found out there. I saw that Headspace has a Radio Headspace podcast that every day they put out these little 3 to 5 minute short little you can do it messages is what I call them. So I didn't want it to be that short because it was just kind of just as I was getting into it, it kind of ended. But I definitely wanted it to be something that is consumable in a very short amount of time. I personally get frustrated with podcasts that get run on and on and on and on. I've unsubscribed from podcasts that are 2 hours and longer, just because I don't have the time to listen to all these things. So I wanted to make sure that we give concise information that people might need and motivation that people might need in short bites, but not short enough to make it be, I'm left wanting more. So all of the segments on the show typically are around 12 to 15 minutes. And we find that's a really nice sweet spot. Perfect time if you're commuting at some point when we all get back to commuting in this world. As you commute, the average commute is about 20 minutes. So it just about fills the time that you need to fill while you're on your commute into work on the mornings. And it just seemed like the right fit for us. So I brought on a licensed professional counselor because though I'm not licensed, I would never pretend to be a mental health professional. But I did want to make sure that the credentials of whoever I had on the show were top notch. So Rachel Landine, who's the host of the show, is a licensed professional counselor here in Virginia, and she is TV ready. She's beautiful, and she is so smart and so knowledgeable of the I don't want to say coursework, but really in a way that's kind of how we've categorized them. Each segment talks about a different part of mental health, but she knows so much about so many of them that it was a perfect fit, and the rest is history.
And tell me about like some of the segments that maybe some of your favorites that have been podcast segments.
Sure. We recently had Amy Corey. Amy is a singer-songwriter in Nashville. She was born in Vietnam, but then was adopted by an American family. She ended up struggling with mental health most of her young life. She's a very young lady in and of itself still. But even when she was younger, I think she's in her 8th year of recovery right now. So that tells you how early on she actually struggled with these things. But she shared her story with us about the type of things that she used to do to herself, suicidal tendencies, self-harm, that kind of thing. And she said something that really resonated with me, probably because I'm undergoing the same things that she's going to, not to the depth that she has by any stretch. I would say that my PTSD is incredibly mild compared to what a lot of people out there are suffering from. But I believe that PTSD is PTSD. If you encountered a traumatic experience, doesn't matter whether you were in war or you were abandoned by your mom, in your mind, it's still PTSD, and it's still a disability that you have to deal with. Anyway, sorry to digress there. She said that when she was ready to tell her story, she needed to make sure that her wounds were healed, because if your wounds aren't healed before you start talking about your story, they could reopen and fester and create more infection and cause you to relapse. Well, that resonated with me big time, because here I am telling my story to whoever wants to hear it, but perhaps might have started a little too soon, because I found myself very early on in this journey, as I was speaking to people about my past and my struggles, I found that I would relive them, and then I would spend the rest of the day bitter and angry, and just found myself back where I started from. So I've learned that until someone is really through it, it's probably not great to hash it all up again, for lack of a better word. So I loved that segment. She's a remarkable young lady. But we've had segments about postpartum depression, the challenges that women go through when they are giving birth, specifically and especially during COVID times. Just blew me away. Being a man, I was not at all aware of some of the things that that they are still currently having to deal with within the healthcare industry. So we had Dr. Blunt talking about that, and she was fabulous as well. We had a hypnotherapist on the show, or a hypnotist on the show, to talk about the benefits of hypnotherapy for mental health. And there apparently is a very quick way to get beyond your challenges, apparently. I've not been brave enough to attempt it, but according to this hypnotherapist, who I've actually known for quite a while, hypnosis is a great way to at least start the process of healing. And I don't think I ever would have thought of that, honestly. So I loved that segment as well. There's so many. I think there's 26 different episodes right now. online. And it just seems that each segment seems to be better than the last. We had Amber J. Lawson on the show that she set up Comedy Gives Back that raised $750,000 for out of work comics out in LA, because when COVID hit, suddenly all comedy scene ground to an absolute halt. And most people that are tuning in know that comedians share, or they're funny because of their own personal traumas. A lot of people will tell you, look at Robin Williams. The folks that make us laugh because they're trying to cover their own personal grief. So that just the COVID shutting everything down just exacerbated the problem. And she actually started her career with Second City up in Chicago because she's knee deep in that industry. She thought she had to do something. So having her on the show, and if you've never listened to Amber J, she is a riot. She is outspoken and just a wonderful human being. So I absolutely loved her episode as well. There's just so many. It's hard to. It's kind of like picking between all your children.
And then tell me about, so the show, your own show is the Skeptic Metaphysician.
Yes.
Tell me about, so was it first, which came first? Was it?
It's like the chicken and the egg question. Yeah. The Skeptic Metaphysician is something that I've had in my head for a long time. In my 20s, early 20s, I started getting interested in the metaphysical. And what I mean by the metaphysical is energy healing and past life regression and out of body experiences and crystals and all that kind of new age kind of stuff that a lot of people tend to roll their eyes at. I wanted to believe, and in fact, that's my tagline on the show is I, like Mulder, I want to believe. I really do want to believe. But I'm also an eternal skeptic. So I've got to find something. I have to find something that shows me for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, that this is real. So when someone says, yeah, past life regression, absolutely. Brian K. Weiss, Many Lives, Many Masters, the book that he wrote, kind of explains it all and proves it to you right then and there. Well, the skeptic in me is going to say, well, couldn't I just be making up a story to myself when I'm under meditation? So how do I know that that's really, I lived a different life, right? So that never really kind of resonated with me. So my whole life, I've been kind of dabbling in that world, trying to find something, anything that can prove it, that we're more than just this three-dimensional world that we can feel. And I've had lots of experiences. I've talked to lots of people. I've documented my travels, so to speak, in my own journals and things like that, but I never really expressed it in a medium where others could consume it. So believe it or not, Calm, Cool, and Connected started first. And then as we were talking about all these mental health modalities, it struck me that one of the things that I'm not sure would have been appropriate to cover on that show, because it is so completely scientifically based, was the esoteric, which is spiritual. And I'm not, as you read in the introduction, I'm not a religious man. I do feel like I could be spiritual, like I am spiritual, but spiritual in terms of I believe that there is something out there for us after we die, or that there is something among us right now that we can't see, feel, touch. I just need proof, so I'm always searching for it. So after I launched Calm, Cool, and Connected, and I found that I'm not comfortable having the Reiki healers or the psychic mediums on the show, I decided to launch the Skeptic Metaphysician as a way to share some of the information that I've gathered in the past through my travels, and also found that the show started evolving and taking a life of its own into the sharing of my own personal journey because it's kind of all tied in together. When I had my breakdown last year, I turned to meditation, which in turn led me to other things that helped me. Now, it may not be right for everyone, but I can tell you that it helped me in a tremendous fashion.
What specifically did you notice with your meditation practice? Like what did you notice happening?
So the very first thing I noticed was when I first started meditating, everyone, a lot of people say that when they first start meditating, it's incredibly difficult for them to still their mind. They can't sit still. They get bored very quickly. Because my mind was such a mess at that time, the times I took to sit in meditation actually helped me to clear the clutter. It was a sanctuary for me to go to not have to think about all the crap that I was going through right then and there. So that time period, I started just with 10 minutes every day. I expanded out to 20, then 30 minutes. There are times where I found it very difficult for me to come out of it. I didn't want to come out of it. In a way, I think I was probably using it as an escape, right, to get away from all the problems in my head. But it really started the process of me releasing the anxiety, releasing the depression, releasing the self-hatred and anger that I felt towards myself. And meditation also led me to do some explorations of some books that I had read a long time ago, but was able to rediscover. Books like Conversations with God or the 10 Spiritual Laws of Success and Well-Being by Wayne Dyer, and The Alchemist, and things like that, the Celestine Prophecy, all these books that I had read many, many years ago, but they kind of sort of resonated, but not really. Uh, I picked them up again and found that, holy smokes, these things are speaking exactly to my truth. And if you're not familiar with Conversations with God, it's basically a writer who sits down and um, starts asking questions, writes questions to God, and suddenly, somehow, God started answering back through his own handwriting. So auto writing, or I forgot what they call that, but and first time I heard about the book, I scoffed. Conversations with God, to me, it seems like a religious thing. It's not at all. It's very much about the spiritual, and really about being a good person, and being a good person to others, and realizing the good in others, even though they may not really see it in themselves, or they might be lost within their own personal struggles, and identifying the differences. So that was able to then translate into my meditations to transitioning to an acceptance of my own self and my circumstances, but also an acceptance of everyone else around me. I am an incredibly judgmental person. I am incredibly ego driven. If I'm not getting accolades, then I am miserable. Now I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to change both. I'm trying to realize that everyone is going through their own personal struggles, and I have no idea what those struggles are unless I talk to them. But for me to automatically assume that someone is out to get me for whatever reason, or that what they're doing is dumb, how could they possibly do that? Or what, I can't even imagine how they can believe that, right? The truth is, you're right. I can't imagine how they can believe that, because I'm not in their circumstances. I'm not in their situations. So I'm trying to find a way to really truly live the life where there is no reason for me to judge anybody. There's no reason to automatically assume that just because someone disagrees with something that I'm saying, it's not because they don't like me. It's because of different truth that we're living in, and their truth is just as valid as my truth. And the fact that the only way forward for me to be a happier man is to be a humble man. I've always found it very difficult to make connections with people. I have very, very few personal friends. I've always kept people at arm's length for obvious reasons, because of the challenges I went through when I was very young. And it's just the life I learned how to live. And because of it, I became very much me, me, me. Look at me. Look how wonderful it is. Don't you love the show? Don't you love what I did? Isn't this wonderful? And I found that I fight with people that don't agree with the way I feel we should move forward with a project. And one of the things that Amber J. Lawson, who was on the show, mentioned, and she was on my Skeptic Metaphysician as well as on Calm, Cool, Connected, because she's just such an amazing human being. She said there are two questions that you need to ask yourself whenever you get in those situations. The first question is, what if I didn't have anything to prove? What if it didn't matter, right? And what if they really weren't coming at me from a place of ill will? Those two questions they're very simple questions, but they're questions that when I ask those questions to myself, when I find myself getting agitated because of an email that I got from somebody, or a phone call, or something that somebody said to me, as the angry man that I am, that I'm trying not to be, when I ask myself those questions, I suddenly realize it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they believe what I believe or not. It doesn't. There's no reason why I need to convince them of anything. Let them live their life the way they want to live their life. Just you go ahead and live your life the way you want to. There's no need for me to prove anything to anyone. What if I didn't have to prove anything to anyone? And those are the mantras I'm trying to live under, because I find that they are just remarkable. I talked a lot. I don't know if I even answered your question.
No, I think definitely that and more. So do you feel that in terms of with meditation, did you find it easier to sort of take a step back and realize that some of the things that you were getting personally aggravated by, that did it help you kind of see the complexity to it, that maybe this is actually this other person's issue and they're just taking out their frustration on me or whatever? Like, did meditation kind of help with that?
Absolutely. I can tell you that the only way to find your personal truth, that I find, the only way for me, was to silence myself, silence my thoughts, silence my ego, and allow myself to be in the present moment, to be mindful, to live mindfully, and to Dr. Wayne Dyer said it beautifully in his book. He says that the only way to speak to God is by being in silence. Now, you can say God as the grand creator, or you can say God as the universal life energy, or you can say God as however you see God. I tend to look at it more as my own higher self, or what we all go back to after we pass. But the only way to connect with that intelligence is through silence. You can't hear someone. Before this interview, we were talking about how we do questions and things like that. And you mentioned you don't specifically send out questions to people because you want to actually have a dialogue where you actually listen to the answers that someone's giving you and respond. Same thing. You can't hear what God is trying to tell you if you're constantly thinking and doing and saying and talking. So you need to find silence. And meditation did that to me, for me. Meditation allowed me to have 20 or 30 minutes a day where I can just be in complete silence and allow the true me to show me where I was and where I needed to go. Kind of related, I had a mentor in my professional life that one day said to me, I'm a one of those guys that is incredibly competitive, if you couldn't tell that by now, and very much I need to over deliver, and I'm always going, and this project and that project, and I've always been, I shouldn't say always, but I've been fairly successful by in overachieving. And my mentor said, after he asked me how I felt I was doing professionally, and I said, "Oh, gangbusters! Look at this, that," and he said, "That's great, but how often do you just sit and think? How often do you sit and strategize?" And I got to tell you, that floored me, because I don't, like, who has time to sit and think for, what, a minute, 2 minutes? How long you're thinking? He said, you need to sit at least once a week in your office and do nothing but think, and have a pad and a piece of paper, a pencil and a piece of paper in hand, to just think and write down any ideas that come to you for an hour a week. And ideally, you do it all in one shot. I thought he was smoking something. Who has the time to sit there and sit for an hour in this busy professional life that we're all living in? Lo and behold, suddenly his guidance is come back to not haunt me, but reinforce all the lessons that I learned over the last year while I've been meditating. Those are the times when the best ideas come to me, when the problems that I've been struggling with, the solutions come to me, when I am able to release ego and judgment, and I emerge from my meditative stance in such a different place, that now my family says that if I don't meditate in the morning, they don't want to be around me. So,
So people around you are able to notice the differences.
yes. When I came back to my team after my hiatus from work, um, the first thing that someone said to me on a one-on-one that I had with them was, I want to learn how to be how you are now. They called it something. It was I want to learn how to be nonchalant like you, or I forgot what the term is, and I'm so sorry. I should have been prepared for this question, but Zen, that's the term. I want to learn how to be Zen like you, because I came back a different man. Now, after I came back, I had time to do nothing but work on myself over that time that I was on hiatus. But then, of course, as life sneaks up on you, and suddenly you are finding yourself backsliding. So it is a constant discipline. You have to be consistent, because without the consistency, if you sit in silence for 10 minutes once every few weeks, it's hard to get the results that you're going to want.
What, besides meditation, have there been any other practices or just things that have been really paramount to your kind of spiritual metaphysical journey?
I'm glad you asked that question, because we started talking about the Skeptical Metaphysician, about me looking for something that proves tactically that there is something else out there. There is something that I guess, spoiler alert, I did find that thing that I was looking for. I'm not sure if you are familiar with Reiki energy.
Heard of it, yeah.
So Reiki energy is an ancient Chinese energy healing technique that was rediscovered by Dr. Usui and reintroduced into Western culture. And the theory behind Reiki is that you're tapping into the universal love energy, right? So around us, everything around us, our energy is pure love, Apparently, that's what they're saying. Right? Remember, I'm a skeptic, so I believe part of it, and but so you're channeling this universal life energy into you, and you are then sending this energy into another person through your hands. And the first thing you do when you are trying to channel this energy is you go into a meditative trance. You meditate and you get yourself balanced and centered so that you can become a conduit for this energy. Now, I'll tell you, when I was looking into Reiki energy, they probably 6 or 8 of us in a room, and they're telling us the techniques and the practices, and here's the hand positions and all that kind of stuff. And one by one, they would take us into a back room to attune us, right? Supposedly they're attuning your vibrational rate to that, to be closer to the vibrational rate of the energy, of the universal life energy. So one by one, we would go while someone else is in the back room. We were practicing on each other. Someone was lying on a massage table. We would be doing our hand motions or hand positions, thinking, oh, what a waste of time. I'm so sad I'm wasting my 4 hours on a Saturday doing this. But then it became my turn. But as people were coming out of the attunement room, everyone who came out and put their hands to practice again had this reaction like, whoa, right? Okay. There is something to be said about people who really want to believe something, and they can convince themselves that they're feeling something. So I fully understand that. When I went to the back room and was attuned, and it was my turn to come back out, didn't really phase me. I'm not going to be one of those that gets, oh, whoa, right? That's not going to be me. I'm really going to say, yeah, I don't feel anything, but I don't feel anything different, but I'm glad that you do. Well, I'll tell you what, when I put my hands in that first position on that person on that massage table, I was floored. I was floored. The rush of energy that came out of my hands, there is no question whatsoever that there is something to this. I don't know what. I don't know exactly. I can't explain it scientifically as much as I want to, which is, I guess, why they call it esoteric and spiritual, right? Metaphysical. I can tell you that the Reiki healing became my proof that there is something beyond this three-dimensional world that we live in, because I absolutely felt the energy flow through me. And if I was a skeptic even still, they did this exercise where they took a bottle of water. We opened up the bottle of water after we were all attuned. We poured a little bit into a Dixie cup and put it aside. We closed the bottle of water, turned it upside down on our laps, and Reiki'd the bottle of water for 5 minutes or so, 5-10 minutes. After that, they asked us to pick up the Dixie cup and drink from the Dixie cup. We did. It tastes like water. Then we opened up the water bottle and tasted the water from the water bottle. And there was a absolute difference in taste between the water in the Dixie cup and the water in the water bottle. I can't explain it other than this energy somehow rearranged the atoms within, or the molecules within that bottle of water or that water, to make the taste different somehow, better. Now, the skeptic in me always says, well, maybe you just seeing what you want to see, tasting what you want to taste. But I was there to disprove it. I was there to show myself it was not the case. They also have studies about people who do this with plants, people who Reiki plants and don't Reiki others. The plants that are Reiki'd do much, much better than the plants that don't. And the books are out there, and I've seen them and I've read them, and because it absolutely blew my mind that this was real. So over the past year, I have reignited my Reiki practices to the point where anytime that I meditate now, the Reiki energy is activated. My wife, whenever she has a headache, comes to me and asks me to Reiki her head, because within 5 minutes or so of Reikiing her head, her headache magically disappears. So out of all the modalities I've looked into, and I've looked into a lot. In fact, I'm about to do a past life regression with a past life regression therapist that I'm going to record for our show. But I've done group past life regressions before. I told you kind of what I felt about that. I've tried out of body experiences, astral projections, never was able to do that. I've tried crystal healing and never really saw any results from that. I joined a coven to try to see if Wicca was the answer. I joined the circles and I did the rituals and um, cast the spells and all that kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of this stuff could probably just be explained by the power of suggestion, right? Or manifestation. Right? Everyone says that, what is the secret, that book that came out, that if you believe something is going to happen enough, it will happen enough because you're actually making it happen. You're manifesting it into your life. So the things I experienced during that time could possibly be explained in that way. But what I found at the end of the day is it doesn't really matter. As long as you're getting the results that you want, whether it's me wishful thinking into it happening or actual magical forces bringing these things about, hey, things are happening and I'm okay with that. I'm good with that. So I know I digressed again and I'm sorry, I'm notorious for that. But to answer your question, meditation and Reiki have been the two that have gone really hand in hand with everything, as well as over the course of my interviewing people for the show, I have met some remarkable humans. Some of them are who claim to be psychic and mediums and channels, and my interviewing them and subsequent remaining in contact with them has really helped me to tune into, hey, let's all just do what's right and good for the world and for ourselves.
Awesome. Well, anything that we haven't covered yet, Will, that you think would be relevant for the listeners before we wrap up for the day?
I think we covered a lot. I will say that getting back to the away from the metaphysics and more towards the scientific. Excuse me, sorry. I would say that if there is one thing that I would recommend highly, and I'm finding it now to be somewhat of a cliche, but I can't tout it enough. If you are going through something, there are two things that I would suggest you do. One, absolutely find a therapist, find someone to speak to, because there is a stigma with opening up to a therapist and going to therapy. Thankfully, that's changing now through COVID. Trying to find a counselor sometimes is not the easiest thing in the world. I found that firsthand, and I hope that it continues to move in that direction after COVID. But find a therapist that you match with, because there is no substitution to having someone that can help you work through problems. You cannot work on them on your own as much as you think that you can. You can't. We all need help. And you're not alone out there. There's so many people out there that are going through the same things that you are going through, that reaching out for help is not going to make you weak or someone who has a problem. It's going to make you human. And you're going to find other humans out there that are willing to reach out their hands and help you. And by all means, if there's one thing that you do every day to try to improve your mental health, is just live from gratefulness. If you wake up in the morning and the first thing you do is you count the 5 things that you're the most grateful for, and you focus on those 5 things day after day after day, it's been found that being grateful on a consistent basis improves your happiness quotient exponentially. And all you have to do is Google it. There's so many research studies out there that say just that I could not, in good conscience, leave this interview without stressing that. You really just be grateful. I know sometimes it's difficult to find the things to be grateful for, but hey, you woke up this morning, you're still breathing, you have a family perhaps, or you have opportunities that are coming to you. There's always things that you can find in your life that you can be grateful for, and that will make all the difference.
Awesome. Well, if someone wants to get in contact with you or find out more about either the podcast that you're involved with, where would you direct them to?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Calm, Cool, and Connected and the Skeptic Metaphysician are both on all the major podcast platforms. I think Google Podcast is the only one that doesn't have the Skeptic Metaphysician for different reasons. Calm, Cool, and Connected is on all of the major podcasting platforms. Skeptic Metaphysician is on most of them as well. So just look for those there. We also have Calm, Cool, and Connected and Skeptic Metaphysician both have Facebook pages that you can certainly join. Also, Calm, Cool, and Connected is on social media on Instagram. There's also, if you go to yourview.com, it's yurview.com, you can find the video aspect of Calm, Cool, and Connected there if you wanted to watch the interviews instead of just listen to them. So that would probably be the best ways to get a hold of us.
Great. And if the listeners, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, go ahead and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're Roscoe's Wetsuit. You can also find audio versions of the podcast available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and most of the other major podcast platforms. So go ahead and check us out. Will, again, I wanted to really thank you for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed our conversation.
As did I. Thank you so much for inviting me again. I thank you for your platform, the platform that you're providing, because it's very, very important nowadays to get these messages out, because there's a lot of us out there going through things. So thank you.
Well said, and thank you. Thank you.